everybody.
Hi.
Live for Women That Shred. I don't think I've done this in several weeks. I always feel like my first time every time I do this. But we have a special guest today who I have known through LinkedIn for a while, but you reached out to me out of the blue because you were being really intentional, right? About kind of checking who your connections were and seeing the ones that would align with what you're doing. And you reached out and I was like, oh, well, let's have a conversation, but let's do it live so that everybody can listen in.
I love that. Let's reconnect and do it in front of a bunch of people.
Yes, that's how I work. Just put you on the spot. But Margo Temkin, did I pronounce the last name correctly? Is it Temkin? Yeah.
Okay. Temkin, you did. Yep. Always going to put a P in there if you're writing it, but please don't. Nope. And a Margo with no T.
You know what? That's the other thing too, is that I think I might have accidentally put a T at it, like after when I texted Tal. So I apologize. But I have Margo here. And Margo, you've been in the mortgage industry for a while, but you just recently stepped away, right? And kind of trying something a little bit different.
Tell me about that. So I bounced around a little bit when I was very young with my husband's career because we moved a lot. So when I did first get in to mortgage, it was sort of by accident, as it always happens. Yes. And so I actually spent 6 years working with a direct mail firm, and we worked with really high quality, successful loan officers and real estate agents across the country to do their direct mail campaigns. So my real foundation of marketing and kind of the real estate professional world was, monthly consistent direct mail postcards, which is really not the sexiest thing in the world. But, I really got to
do it years later. It's amazing how I still get those cards in the mail.
I love it. It's cheap. It's powerful. Everybody has a mailbox. And I got to really see how me working with somebody made a distinct difference in their business. So, my clients were not just like somebody I'm shooting off a copy deck to. It was really interactive. I got to know them. I would write their postcards. So it was really almost intimate in a way. So after that, I moved back home to Dallas and, did a corporate stint in the marketing department at a big mortgage company. COVID hit. That was a whole thing. And kind of pivoted and joined one of my old clients on their team and helped him originate and do business development and marketing. So I've really been kind of in a lot of these corners of mortgage, but really at the end of the day, it's all about people and storytelling. And that's what I love.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, obviously we see like trends in marketing, but I feel like the storytelling piece has always been on trend, but I do believe that there is an emphasis on it a lot as of late because, people connect to stories. And for me, I've been kind of lucky to always just kind of be a natural storyteller because I love to talk and I love to give a lot of background. And I get made fun of by my ex and my kids. They're like, just get to the point, Mom. I'm like, no, but there's something to be said about like setting the stage and, giving color context as to why. And they're like, no, just like, don't worry about all of that. So it's
we say land the plane.
Is that what it is?
5-year-old, I was like, Aaron, land the plane. Like, get to the point. Why are you giving me like 60 lines to prepare me for what you're going to say?
Isn't that funny? Like, yeah. So I've always done that. So I when I hear storytelling, I'm like, ooh, perfect.
Me sold. Yes, totally.
Yeah. So
and it is.
Now go ahead. I'm going to ask you, like, with like what you're doing, like who you're working with now, because kind of pivoted.
It is different. So I'm still doing, I'll kind of explain this idea that I always used to, all of my networking for the last 12 years has been in real estate, right? Like going to WCR, like Women Council of Realtors, going to things that as a loan officer team, we would sponsor lunch and learns, whatever, any millions of networking things that 100% of the time I would sit in my car before I went inside and just like curse under my breath and like, God, I don't want to do this. This is so awful. And then every time you go, you like I've never regretted not going.
Yeah, you always like meet one person and there's like one connection that you make and you realize, okay, this was all so worth it. But it's always what I have found, Margo, it's always the times that I don't want to go and I'm like dreading it the most. Usually those are like the best ones. That's what I'm like.
It really is true.
I went.
And I'm not a shy person and I love making friends. It's not about like anxiety. I just like, like I had stuff to do today, you know?
It's a lot of energy. I think people tend to forget that even though we might be extroverts and be really good at the social settings, there's something about that you're really expending a lot of yourself and you're on. And it can be very draining. So I know for me, like I've recently noticed that like even at events, I have to kind of walk away just for a good like 10 minutes, like in silence, just to kind of regroup because it's taking its toll as I get older.
You're so right. I now understand. But so all to say all that, like the networking that you think is like, oh, I met this one person, or oh, I got a lead, or oh, I did this. Really, when I decided to go out on my own and start freelancing, I saw very quickly how that paid off. So, you don't really do kind of an inventory of your network, right? You kind of just go and know that you know people and rely on kind of your wit, whim, whatever. But, when I started putting myself out there as me instead of the loan officers I was marketing on behalf of, I really quickly saw the stuff that I'd been preaching to everybody else, how it was working for myself. So, these people that on the periphery reached out to me and were like, oh, I have a project for you. And you already speak the mortgage language. And this is great. Like, you're so easy. I don't have to explain anything. You don't question what a 3-2 buy down is. And, all these things that I know that to me seems really easy and common because I've been doing it for so long is really valuable. And I've been able to take kind of those mortgage world skills and translate them because, we're mortgage folks, we're a unique bunch. It's like you try to get away, but it always reels you back in and you don't really know how you got here, but you're here and everybody is somehow in real estate and you always end up talking about it. And, even though I've got a couple other clients that I'm writing for, I am still constantly going back to how transactions in real estate work because that's just where my brain is. And you get to know human beings really well, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've learned so much about just like human behavior and human psychology through all of this because it really is something when you're trying to explain to a loan officer or a real estate agent, about putting themselves out there, about the marketing part of it. And you tend to hear a lot of their insecurities, their fears, just everything they're scared of. And so it's like our job to be their cheerleader and support them and just really encourage them and tell them like, no, everybody, feels the same. And no, you don't look as like bad,
right.
You don't sound bad, like all of those things. So we tend to become kind of like
therapists.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you really do learn how to deal with like human nature. And I think that's another thing too, that everyone's like, oh, mortgage industry, it's very transactional. It used to be years ago. It was, there was a time where, the loan officers did enough business to where, it was just quick and it was a transaction. Now it's a relationship. And the only way to build those relationships is to have that human connection. So speaking of human connection, I'm curious, this is something that I've been like, kind of wondering. So as a ghostwriter, as someone that writes for people, obviously you have AI, you have virtual assistants, you have a lot of people that people are hiring to do the ghostwriting and to also engage on behalf of them. And someone like myself, I struggle with that because I have a very unique voice. Like you had said before backstage, you're a smartass. Well, I'm a smartass too. And I have a particular sense of humor that I'm like, I don't know if anyone could be able to like mimic that, but at the same time, there comes a point where you're like overwhelmed. So how do you navigate all of that? Because I feel like that's a big struggle for a lot of people. They need the help, but at the same time, they're like, is this person going to sound like me?
Great question. And the answer is probably not going to be what you're thinking.
Oh, I love that.
It's mostly just talking, honestly. Like I spend a good month before I ever actually publish anything for somebody, getting to know them, talking to them. And a lot of it is, you know, like this. I feel really strongly about being on camera with somebody. I am very expressive. I'm loud. I have a foul mouth. I say everything I think. But at the same time, I need to see how that person is and how they react and how they are interacting with me and how they might, you know, how they speak. It matters. So I record all this. I take their transcript. I find their words, and really it's building out those content buckets. Like, you know, if you're a busy exec or you're whoever you are, you know, you need to do it. You know, you want to do it. But it's like something that's just going to live on your to-do list unless somebody kind of kicks you in the butt and gets going. And instead of asking somebody to do it, I'll go and look and build out kind of their 4 content pillars and put a bunch of what I call word vomit into a spreadsheet. And then we get their reaction and we just kind of talk about it. And it's really almost like a discovery for them just as much as it is for me, because it's really hard if somebody asks you something on the spot, like, what do you stand for? What are the top 3 things that your business wants to be if somebody was talking about? That's a tough.
Like, what are your core values? Like, if someone asked me my core values right now, honestly, Margo, I don't know if I'd be able to answer on the spot.
It's very hard. And so it's like an exercise that prompts them to do a little kind of discovery about themselves, but not in like a sit down and write. It's a natural conversation, which, you know, goes back to the storytelling. That's why ghostwriters can do what they do, right? Like, we know how to tell the story. You have all the stories. I just need to get it out from you. And so, you know, one of my ghostwriting clients that's not in the real estate space, mortgage space, it's a food manufacturer. Okay. Like big, massive machinery, which you would think is not at all comparable. Right. But then you start drilling down and you're like, oh, that's a very expensive asset. That is somebody that has to have their business in order, and you have to be there at the right time. You have to have everything prepped. You know, you have XYZ. So at the end of the day, I can liken that to a real estate transaction. You're going to search for something you need. You have prerequisites, but they got to be ready to go. You got to have everything in order. So there's a lot of similarities about everything when you start digging. And so being in mortgage, I think, means being in the people world. You know, you interact with, it's B2B and B2C. You're talking to people, clients, client appreciation parties, buyers, you know, at the closing table, but you're also trying to court these referral partners and get them to spend money with you to do lunch and learns, but you're also trying to get realtors to send you leads, and you're also trying to be a good friend and a mom and every 8,000 bajillion things that are expected of us. And it really does translate more than you would expect. And I was surprised. I thought I was going to stick in my lane 100% because I like more. You know, well, I have to admit it. I like
the language, and it's a particular language. So that's why I think people get sucked in, because it's like, you know, that there's not many people that can speak that or that understand it. So then you almost feel like you have a responsibility to stay within the industry because you are like a commodity in there. So it's like, it is a tough one, right?
It is. And also it's like I'm very much, I'm practical. I'm a practical person. I don't do a lot of fluff. I'm not a shopper. I'm not like a like fashion. That none of that works for me. Like I'm first generation American. So that's a part of that. And so I really strongly believe in like, get it done and move on, because in this world where we are so exposed, or at least we feel very exposed, people are really obsessed with like looking perfect. And even the people that you think have it together are just as angsty on the inside about telling their story and doing their thing. And so just get going. Like on LinkedIn, it's such a wild, weird, so many words.
Very like, I just feel kind of like grateful that I started it when I did, and that I've kind of been able to evolve with it, but it really was just kind of a fluke for me. So, you know, there are people that are getting on it as of late, or just kind of got on it during COVID. And it's interesting, like just kind of seeing how they react to it but at the same time, like it is a very interesting platform, but it's my favorite. And people wouldn't think that a lot of us would love LinkedIn the way we do, but it really is that relationship building. Like, I feel like that's the best, it's the best platform for it. But yeah, it is kind of a,
you get to be smart and funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get to be like professionally silly. And for me, I've never been Margo Temkin. I've always been Margo Temkin at First United Bank or at Prime Lending or at all these places. And so I had to be really cognizant of what I was saying and how I was saying it. Very hard for me if you know me. But now it's different. You know, it's been a few months now and I get to kind of say what I want and people react. And it's like a very weird thing because you feel like you're kind of screaming into the void on LinkedIn if you don't get, you know, that engagement, the likes, the comments. But then I'll go somewhere and people will be like, oh, I've been reading all your LinkedIn posts. Like, that's so great. Like, I love it. I didn't know you were such a good writer. And I'm like, can you just girl?
I know.
Comment. Like,
it's amazing how many people will come up to you that you have, you know, get the opportunity to see at a conference or at an event. And a lot of them just never engage in any of my content, but they've been following me for years. And that's like, I'm always really appreciative though when people do come up. I'm like, thank you so much for taking the time to let me know that you follow me and that you resonate with my content, because a lot of times we feel like it's just out in the void of LinkedIn and you just don't know who you're making an impact on. And so it is kind of a scary thing at times because like even right now, you know, we're on a live, there's no comments, but I know StreamYard, LinkedIn sometimes have issues. So you're like sitting here going, okay, we're talking into the void, but then there's the replay and then people are like, oh, I was listening in, but then they were like at work, you know, because they're at work too. But we start getting in our heads, right? Like even for me as a host, when I have a guest on, I start thinking like, I don't want my guests to think like, oh, why did I take the time to sit on this thing when nobody's like watching, right? So then like you start feeling badly. So it is kind of like one of those things where
a world of guilt.
Even though I've been doing this for so long, I still, you know, have my moments.
Totally. It's so true. I call them the loyal lurkers and I love them. Thank you, loyal lurkers out there reading and learning and thinking I'm funny. And eventually, you know, the magical part about that, the business side of that, is those lurkers are the ones who end up hiring. You don't need, it's not the person commenting all the time who's sending you business.
Which is nice. I do appreciate, like, I have some very loyal supporters and cheerleaders that have nothing to do with the industry. They're just there like cheering me on. And, you know, I really appreciate that too, because it's nice to have people that are like in your corner, no matter what, like no matter who you are, what you do. I think all of us as humans appreciate having that, you know, validation, if you will, you know, because a lot of it is validation.
And, you know, the funniest thing is like I've spent most of my career kind of talking at loan officers, like, you need to be doing this. You need to drip your sphere of influence every month. You need to post testimonials. You need to post this.
You have a responsibility to educate the future home buyer.
Exactly. Well, you don't have your sphere of it. You don't have your top 5 elephants. You don't have your process, all this stuff. And that it was really easy for me to tell them. And now I'm living it. So you can see kind of, if you look at my LinkedIn, there's about a month where I fell off the face of the earth. I was for 3 or 4 months posting every day, just killing it, like, and shocked because my kids were home during the summer and I was still doing it. And then I did that thing that loan officers do. I got all the business and I got really busy executing the business and trying to figure it out. And my stuff fell to the wayside. And this week I kind of was like, okay, it's totally fine. My clients are good. So now I'm going to go back to, like, you know, everything is growing pains. And it's, as long as you're honest, I believe, like, people are so forgiving. Forgiving.
And then you have to forgive yourself too. We have to extend grace to ourselves as well. You know, because I have my moments where I'm just like over social media, where I'm just like, I am so sick of like putting my face out there. Like, people are probably sick of seeing it. Like, ew, you know, like, this is just so like absorbed, like content, this and that, like, and then so I sometimes just have to back off, and it's okay. Like, I try not to feel guilty about it or feel badly. I try to give myself some grace and be like, hey, you know what? That's normal. We all go through this. Like, why would I be any different than anybody else? In
It's
that
hard.
respect.
We are just hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's okay though. That's why we do. But I also like, my kids are young. I have a
I was going
kindergartner
to
and
ask
third
you
grader.
how old are they?
So kindergarten and third grade boys.
Yeah, you're like in
And
the thick of it.
yeah, and this is my favorite stage, I will say. Like I'm finally, it's not so much a physical job
Yeah.
anymore with the kids. Like they are just busy, and now I get to, I've gone back to baking and cooking these extravagant things that I really enjoy for myself.
Are you
But
an extravagant baker and cooker?
I am.
Oh, okay.
I love. My husband is lucky. It's like my creative outlet. You'd think writing is, but
Yeah.
I do love writing. But baking bread is like my favorite thing on earth.
Do you have a bread machine?
No.
Oh, so you're
This
like
is my bread
totally
machine.
like, what is it called? Kneading?
Kneading,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Stress relief right there.
Wow. What's your favorite bread to make? I love bread.
I make challah all the time.
No, I love challah. Oh my goodness, that's
God, I
one
wanna
of
mail
my
you some.
favorites. Like, so I went to a Jewish private school when I was in 4th through 6th grade, and Shabbat, the favorite part was the challah, like because we would share challah in the classroom, and it was like that. I was always looking forward to Fridays for the challah.
I make it all the time. I have like huge loaves and rolls that I make, and like tiny rolls, and I fill them with Nutella. And I just really, really, really enjoy the baking side of it. But I also went to a Jewish private school all the way up to 8th grade. And at my school, they would serve the challah with butter and like the country crop, like that.
Yeah.
The like not healthy kind.
Yeah, but that sounds so good right now, Margo. Like,
I know, I'm like
salivating. I might have to find some challah somewhere. There is a Jewish delicatessen that's not too far. It's where I grew up, and we used to go there all the time and get lox and bagels and bialys. I love bialys too.
Yes.
So now I'm like sitting here craving all the yummy like Jewish food.
Well, when you're in Dallas, I'll feed you.
I was going to say, now
thing.
I know who I definitely need to call up when I'm heading out there so that I can get a good meal and some good challah. Oh my gosh. See, who knew? That's one thing that I do love about the show is I'm always like want to like get sides of people that nobody would know.
Well, I just like with loan officers, I always loved the ones that would do something really creative. Like the guy that made his own salsa every year for Christmas and would drop it off at his best client's house.
Oh,
and
so
like
he
that.
would make the salsa. Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And because it's different.
Yeah.
It's a conversation starter. And every time you use the salsa, you think about your loan officer. For me, I'm not a gift giver.
Okay.
I'm
That's not one of your love languages.
Food. I will cook for you, and I want when you come into my house.
Yeah.
Like I need you to eat until you can't breathe.
Okay, I'm coming over. I'm so uncomfortable, and then I'll still think like, oh, I can still eat some more. I love food. Like
that's love. I love food. Food is everything.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things where for me, like I just enjoy it so much. I should be much heavier, but I try to make it a point to at least like work out and everything. But
I eat super healthy, and it's fun to make it super healthy. I know that sounds weird, but the biggest thing of like freelancing on my own is that I'm home. I'm like my office where I'm filming is literally my kitchen. Like you can see my kitchen goes all the way down. So I'm just like bopping between my computer and cooking and baking. It's I'm kind of living the dream a little bit.
I was gonna say, Margo, it sounds like you made a good decision and you're happy and it suits your lifestyle right now and your family and everything. And I think that's important too. And there's nothing wrong with, maybe eventually you go back in. Like that's what happened to me is I left January 2020. I left the industry to go kind of do my own thing too. But then COVID
time to leave.
Yeah, I know. And then March, dun. So for me it was difficult, but I will say it was the best thing for me because what happened is I was able to transcend the mortgage industry. So like how you said earlier, where, some of your clients were like, how am I going to work with people that I'm like not used to working with? Like I had a client who was a dentist and I would go to her offices and we had so much fun, but it was those 2 months right in between COVID, right? So I was able to go to her meeting, her offices. And so what happened is it just allowed me to kind of meet people that had nothing to do with the industry. It gives you a different perspective. It gives you also that confidence of like, hey, what I'm good at is not just good in the mortgage industry. It's good in other industries as well. So then when I came back, I feel like my network expanded in ways that I never thought it would have. And then I had this different perspective. So I feel like this is perfect for you either way, because yeah, if you do come back in, you're someone that can be like, you know what, like I'm going to now take all that knowledge and experience and bring it into this industry. So yeah, I think it's awesome. And I'm like so happy for you.
Thank you. I think for you in the same way, it spurs a lot of creativity that it sometimes gets a little stagnant. The only thing really in mortgage is you're hopping companies more often than not versus growth. You're either a loan officer or you start managing loan officers. And so getting out has kind of given me a different perspective on what's in and out of the mortgage industry. So things that you can take back that you're like, I've seen this be successful with a dentist or, with a recruiting company. Let's wheel this in and see how we can make it work. It's just sometimes getting out of your hole really helps,
Yeah. But I think the constant, like how you mentioned in the beginning, is that storytelling. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, what industry, what company, nothing. Like the storytelling piece of it is still so important, just to kind of, share why you're doing what you're doing, period. Like I think that part of it when people, that's what I love is like, I'll ask someone like, oh, why did you open this restaurant? Or why did you start this business? And then you hear their story and you're like, oh my gosh, like now I feel such a connection to you. Like why you should be sharing that from the beginning. Cause yeah, like it makes it real. It doesn't make it, I mean, I'm sure there's people that start companies just to make money. And I feel like you kind of know, you don't have to ask them their story.
I was just going to say, I think you can tell.
You can tell. So pretty much you don't even want to ask them anything because you're like, ew. But for those, you can tell there's a passion behind it and everything. Like, yeah, you want to hear why.
There's like mortgage real estate, like we're all kind of a little bit gluttons for punishment, it feels like, because there's nothing more horrific, but also more fun to have that like bananas client. And then you go talk to everybody and your process, and it's just like, this person, blah, blah, blah. Like that's where connections come from. Yeah. And I think one of the greatest things about LinkedIn right now is that we kind of almost have an outlet. Like people were expected to keep that internal a lot of the time. You don't want to complain. You don't want to do, and it's not about that, but like there's some real value in being who you are. People want to like you. They want to like the people that they work with. And, it's got to be fun. Like buying a house, any business, it's hard. It's expensive. It's stressful. Like you want to like the person you're working with. You want to laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, luckily I'm in a space where I know a ton of real estate agents, ton of loan officers. And I already know which ones, I would work with if I was buying a home. Obviously, like it would be with my company, with NAF and everything. But if I wasn't in with a particular company right now, like there's already a couple people that I'd be like, those are the people, because I know I get along with them. I know that they, are good at what they do, but they're fun. They have a sense of humor, because I don't want the process to be tedious and boring. I want to at least like have some fun with it. And there are some loan officers out there, people.
There are. I mean, honestly, loan officers are some of the most fun people on earth, because the stress level is so high. Yeah. And it's like I worked with a hard money lender client, and that like I knew a little bit about the difference, but it's very different. The rapid pace of it is so compared to like that 30-day usually like transition for a loan from start to finish. Like it's just so interesting to hear other sides of it and then reflect back and like see how they really do work very hard. Like realtors and loan officers get a bad rap, but
yeah, they do. Oh, that's why I don't originate. I have my license and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you know everybody, you could do so much business because you know so many people. I'm like, yes, but there's something to be said about the fact that they get paid as much as they do because the stress and the work and everything that goes into it, like they are earning their paycheck in a way where I personally no, thank you. I rather make much less money and have a different lifestyle.
Amen.
Yeah. So, yeah.
My sanity is worth more than that.
I know. I totally the same way. All right. Well, Margo, we're already up at the 30-minute mark.
Oh.
It always goes so fast, but it was great to finally have a conversation and, for people to hear how our first conversation went.
So fun.
Yeah, but let people know how they can connect with you, because I know now you're on Instagram. I found out when I tagged you on Instagram.
Yeah, so Margo Tempkins on Instagram. A lot of cooking, a lot of bread, a lot of children, and some Israel stuff. But on LinkedIn, I am talking about content, mostly storytelling, day-to-day life of little kids and trying to work, and husband, all four of my kids, all of us are creative, my whole family, and it is entertaining. So join me.
Yay. Well, thanks again, Margo. Stay on and we'll just go ahead and, turn off the live.